to look at some candles today? Yeah, and these, of course, like all of our other items, are candles that are going to bestow you with some magical powers. Each one is associated with its own power. Yeah. So I should give you a tiny bit more background info about these items specifically. And the thing I need to tell you there is that these candles have been used. We used to have a program where we would rent out magical items, and we do still have that for some things, but we are discontinuing it for candles, at least for these, and some of them are almost used up. But the good news is that we are pricing them at a steep discount because of that. So this is a really affordable, sort of entry-level way to get your hands on something magical. And even though the wax is mostly used up, it is sometimes able to last for a surprisingly long time. So these could have, hours of burning left in them. And the other thing is that you only need to use them once every few months for the power to remain present. They don't need to be actually burning to imbue you with that power. They just need to burn occasionally to sort of rekindle that spirit, as it were. Okay? Yeah, and we can have someone examine them a little more closely and give you some more specific guidance on that if you want, once you choose what you're going to buy. So if that all sounds good to you, I'll go through the 5 of them that we have on offer, and I'll explain what each of them does. Of course, they all do look a little different, and they all smell different, like regular candles. So as with some of our other items, it's kind of an interesting choice where you want to factor that in, like what you want to be smelling when you light a candle around your house. But at the same time, that's probably a pretty low priority compared to what they actually do magically. So it's kind of a secondary consideration, okay? So let's take a look at our first one. Okay, so this is our first candle. As you can see, it has been mostly burned. It has 3 wicks, and it is called the Berry Waffle Cone. So this one smells really good. It's sweet without being cloying, but it is very sweet. And to be honest, I'm not sure what the beach connection is, but I will say maybe it's just a marketing thing, but to me it feels like a summer candle as opposed to a winter one. Maybe it's just that the sweetness doesn't smell like cinnamon or cloves or anything that you might associate with the holidays. It is pretty accurately more like a waffle cone or like a berry pie maybe. So yeah, the candle smells good, but let's get to the more important part, which is the power that it comes with. So the power that comes with this candle is that babies will never cry around you. Now, let me get into some of the details of that, because I know that that's a big one and it can come with some concerns. So first of all, I will establish that this does not work on your own children. So I mean children in the broadest sense, whether you birthed them, adopted them, whether they're your stepchildren, if you play a parental role in their life. This will not work on babies that are yours. It does use the term baby pretty loosely, so it will work on children who are up to maybe 3 years old, so toddlers and very young children. And what does it mean that they are not going to cry around you? Well, that means that they will still get upset, they will still have their normal emotions, they are human beings. And we do have pretty strict rules about influencing human beings in a negative way. But what's going to happen is that these children are going to essentially communicate what is upsetting them, if anything, to you in either a verbal or a non-verbal way. So if you are taking care of a baby and it starts crying, you are just going to have this sort of deep intuitive sense of why it is crying. So, sorry, I should rephrase that. If it would normally be crying, it won't if you have this candle in your possession. It doesn't have to be with you in your current location. It has to be located in whatever you would consider your home. And then it sort of attaches itself to you. So what's going to happen is that the baby will look upset. You know, it might frown, it might fidget, move its arms and legs. It might even open its mouth, but it won't be audible crying. But you are going to immediately sense whether it's hungry, whether it's scared or uncomfortable. And so you're going to be able to address that as if it was crying, and in fact easier because you'll know what's wrong. So I just want to establish that up front, that this is not a dangerous power. This is, if anything, the opposite, because you will get that sort of psychic, intuitive feeling even if you're in the other room. Not that I recommend leaving infants alone, but if you have to run into the bathroom, normally, their crying would sort of summon you. But in this case, that's not going to be necessary. Okay, and we haven't fully explored the range of its abilities, but we believe that with something like a 2 or 3-year-old that is able to talk with you, what's probably going to happen is that person, that child, is for that amount of time they spend with you, they're going to have an easier time communicating, just like the baby. But since they can already speak in many cases, a young child might say, "Oh, I'm hungry, I'm frustrated that you didn't buy me that toy," and then you're going to be able to talk about it with them. And like I said, they won't be less upset than if they were crying, but you can still talk with them, they can still feel better over time as they normally would, and they'll just be able to tell you what their feelings are. Okay? So this does work for like hours at a time. Basically the whole time you would be babysitting or caring for someone, but probably not for days and days and days, because it is healthy for people to cry sometimes. And so that power is going to wear off and then refresh the next time you babysit or spend time with them, maybe in a couple of weeks. So it's not going to do any harm to the person. Okay, and like I said, for similar reasons, it's not going to work on your own children. So this is best if you're a caretaker, if that's your profession, or if you just find yourself in the position of caring for someone else's children regularly. Okay, so that is this one is beach waffle cone, and as a bonus, it does smell really good. Okay, this one, excuse its appearance, it does have a little bit of wax on the front. This is called Northern Lights, and it is peppermint spruce bitter almond. It says bitter, but it doesn't smell bitter at all. This one I would describe as a very wintry scent because it does have that peppermint, but it's also sweet, and you can smell a bit of that almond underneath. And like it says on it, it is 100% soy wax, so no beeswax, and it is pretty full. It hasn't been used that much relative to its full size. And like all the other ones, this doesn't have to be burning constantly for you to experience its benefits when it is in your possession, okay? So what this one is going to do is to make you really good at doing makeup. And the interesting thing about this candle is that there's almost no caveats. So, in fact, there's none I can think of. So, you are going to be really good at doing your own makeup and that of your friends, your family, your clients. So you could just own this and start a profession as a professional makeup artist. I guess the only caveat I can think of is that, candles don't last forever, and you do have to burn this occasionally to sort of reboot its powers. So if you were going to use this to transition into a makeup profession, I would just recommend that you don't sort of zone out and let the power just take over. What you could do is use it to be good immediately, but also pay attention to what you're doing. Like, it might feel like muscle memory that you don't really have, but I would just do your best to pay conscious attention and to learn the techniques that you're already practicing. And that way, when the candle does eventually run out, you will likely have picked up those skills for real, and maybe you won't have this like innate spectacular talent, but you will still likely be very skilled at doing makeup. Okay, so that's a pretty straightforward and simple one. It does apply to stage makeup, really anything you might want to do. So like an everyday look, your tastes are still going to come into play here. You're still going to have choice. So it's whatever makeup you want to have. Like if you just want to have a completely natural look to cover something up, or to just look your best without looking like you're wearing makeup, it will also do that for you, okay? So that's that peppermint candle. As you can see, this one is by the same brand. This is our third candle here. The brand is the Fanciful Fox. And this is a gingerbread candle. It is also 100% soy wax. So this one is another one that, because of its scent, I would describe as a winter or maybe a fall candle, a holiday candle. And just as an aside, I will note that I actually live in an apartment. I'm not allowed to light candles with a flame, and I have used products like this with a candle warming lamp, and I will say that that does activate the powers just as well as lighting them with a match, okay? So that's definitely not something you have to worry about, as long as they are being melted in some fashion. And the power of this candle is that you are always going to know the name of every actor on screen. That includes ones that you already were familiar with but are like on the tip of your tongue. But it also includes like people you've never even heard of. If you're like, oh, is this some actor that I know? They look so familiar. You'll just suddenly know, oh, it's this other person I've never heard of who looks similar. And you'll know their name. Okay, so this one is a bit silly. It's not going to be super practical, but if you're one of those people who's always like, oh, I wish I could know who that was, they seem familiar, or if you have a partner who is always saying, who is that? It can also help you keep track of characters in movies. Like, it's not going to tell you the character name, but if you just have a hard time keeping track of people, and like me, you have trouble with faces, like people look very similar to you, you'll know the actor's name throughout, And that does add one extra step of like, oh, this person is playing the bad guy, so that's who that is. But you will be able to keep track of people a little bit easier because you'll know the actor's name. Okay? And I can see a scenario where this would help with like a trivia game. Like if you see a picture of someone, you're also going to recognize them. So if there was one of those trivia sheets where it's like 12 pictures and you have to name the person, that would work for you too. Of course, that's a pretty small consideration in the scheme of things. So that is this gingerbread candle. Okay. I'll also note that the 100% soy wax also means that there is no palm oil. So if you are a person who is concerned about purchases involving palm oil, which is quite hard to avoid, you will be able to avoid it in purchasing these soy candles, okay? So our fourth candle today is from the brand Yankee Candle. It is flavored like kitchen spice. Well, I should say scented, not flavored. I would not recommend eating any of our candles. So this one has this really warm, comforting, also kind of holiday-ish scent, but I don't think it's constrained to any one season. It does really smell like a cup of tea or a comforting drink, a mulled cider maybe. And I have to say I'm pretty partial to this one recently because I've been watching a lot of streaming services with ads, and what this one does is it makes it so that there are no ads in any streaming service you watch. So honestly, in terms of pure monetary value, which to be fair is not everything, this is a really good deal. You'll see that it is pretty close to used up, so it might last a few months, maybe a year actually, because you can burn it sparingly. So I would estimate a year. So this is basically a year of a subscription to let me rephrase that. So this is basically a year of no ads on every streaming service that you subscribe to. So you're still going to have to pay like the base cost, the base price, but as you probably know, most of the streaming services now, they charge extra, or they'll have a free tier and then a paid tier for no ads, but you will have no ads whatsoever. And that also applies to something like Tubi, where it's free with ads. Of course, there is an ethical dimension to this. If it's a free service that does rely on ads, they will be able to see that ads aren't being played. It's not like they're going to come after you or know why, but in their overall metrics, they'll get slightly less money from advertisers. Of course, it's cents per person. But if that's something that bothers you, you can keep that in mind. So that is the kitchen spice candle. And let's take a look at our last candle. This one, like our first one, has 3 wicks. And it is also quite used up. This one says love on it. As you can see, it is pretty explicitly a Christmassy sort of candle in its color scheme at least. And its scent is cotton candy champagne. So yeah, that scent is pretty hard to describe. It does just smell kind of sweet in a pleasant way, I don't think it really smells like cotton candy, if that even has a scent, or like champagne, but it is a nice scent. And as you can see, it is mostly used. I would again estimate that if you light this sparingly for the purpose of conserving the power, it would still last you about a year. And what this is going to do is prevent you from taking fall damage in sports. So what does that mean? That means that if you are a rock climber and you are into bouldering but you're afraid of falling, you are not ever going to hurt yourself from a fall, no matter how awkwardly you fall. Even if you forgot to tie in on top rope and fall from the top of a 30-foot wall, you're not going to take fall damage. So this could be really nice if you're planning to practice some really hard boulder problems and you just want to be able to be kind of reckless about it. But I would say that this one comes with a lot of caveats. Like, you don't really want to get in the habit of landing in such a way that when this power does wear off, you're going to be breaking your legs all the time. Like, it's just pretty dangerous. But I'm sure that there are ways that this could be used responsibly. And it also applies to other sports. So skiing, like if you fall while you're skiing, you're not going to get hurt. But another big caveat is there are still ways to hurt yourself in all of these sports. So if you ski and you just overtax yourself, you could still strain your muscles. If you are climbing, you could hurt your fingers and your joints or your tendons. This is just going to protect you from fall damage. And sports is pretty broad here, so you could even do something like bungee jumping or hang gliding or whatever it's called when you jump out of a plane. So if you're someone who's always wanted to do something like that, but you're afraid of something going wrong, in this case, even if your parachute did not deploy, you would still just hit the ground and be fine. Of course, what I'm sure you would do anyway, and what I recommend, would be just testing that out. Like jump off something that is 10 feet high and then 20 and make sure that the power works before you're doing something like that. But I think that use of like one-time things that you were otherwise scared of doing is probably one of the best uses of this candle, because you're not going to pick up any techniques that will be hard to undo later, like ways of falling or not protecting yourself. So that is this candle. Protects you from fall damage, okay? So that is it for our candles today. I'll just briefly review what we talked about. So the first one was the waffle cone beach candle, and that makes babies not cry around you and doesn't apply to your own. The second one was making you really good at makeup, and that is the peppermint spice candle. The third one makes you know the name of every actor on screen, and that is the gingerbread candle. The fourth one was the kitchen spice candle, and that is going to make you have no ads in streaming services for the whole duration of its use. And finally, the last one is the cotton candy champagne candle, and that is going to make you take no fall damage in sports. Okay, so as with our other sets of 5 items, these are a set in that we can only allow you to take one of these candles with one of these powers at a time. So I'll give you a minute to think about it. Oh, you already you know which one you want? Okay. Oh yeah, that's a great choice. Okay, so we will just take a look at that. We will give you a more specific estimate of how long it will last. Of course, you have the opportunity to change your mind if that is not what you were imagining, but of course it will also influence the price. So we'll just package that up for you after, and then you'll be good to go. Yeah, thank you again so much for stopping by. Have a great day.